always tell people, like, we are nowhere near where we need to be as a community in Hollywood.
Sure.
But we are we're in the best position ever right now.
Right,
so,
right.
and now is the time to keep using that momentum. So I tell everybody, watch the hell out of this thing.
Yeah.
You know, whatever our people are out there making or in it, like, we need to show the corporate overlords that this is something we want to see. So another call to action for everyone. Has a lot of homework on this episode. But yeah, it's like another call to action. Watch it.
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap, of course, like I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. And man, I know last show was incredibly heavy, and the world just feels incredibly heavy right now, which sadly is becoming more and more common. But with that in mind, I didn't want to do some big monologue about something that was sad or something else that is terrible that's going on in the world. I figured we could probably just skip over that and get into the segment with my guest today. And now listen, we're going to cover some serious stuff. We'll cover some fun stuff, but we're gonna try and make it as light and fun as possible, and maybe just sandwich some of the bad stuff. We'll minimize maybe the bad stuff a little bit for today's show, because I know we all need just a bit of a break from more sad or disturbing news that we've been seeing on our television screen. So with that in mind, my guest today helping me break down some of these headlines, he is the director and writer of the film Bodies Will Tumble and Roll. Eli Vazquez, how we feeling, bro?
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm so hyped to be here, you know, as a Puerto Rican, fellow Puerto Rican. You know, we got that energy, that flavor, all that in cinema and in these talking streets. So thank you for having me in your space. I really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, bro. And it's fitting to have a fellow Puerto Rican coming off of, like, you got the Puerto Rican Day Parade, right? There's just a little different energy happening, you know, this last week or so.
Yeah. My family just went on Sunday, actually.
Nice.
And it was a good time, man, in Chicago. So yeah, they go hard. It was a good time. Lots of flex.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, man, I want to get into your movie and all that you do, because I think it's incredible. But if it's cool with you, I want to first and foremost kind of start with a few current events and get your take on them.
Yeah, let's dive into it. I'm hyped. I'm excited. Let's do it.
All right, man. So let's start a bit lighter, and we'll start in the entertainment industry, where you primarily do your work, but on the music side of things here. Now, I'm not sure if you've been following this. J-Lo has this documentary coming out on Netflix, and it is called Halftime. It's all about her preparation for the 2020 Super Bowl halftime performance, and she's getting a lot of flack, because there is a quote coming out where they're saying she was basically describing the idea of having multiple performers, which was Shakira in this case, or multiple headliners. She described it as the worst idea in the world, and actually they say that J-Lo can be seen venting her frustrations in the film, saying, quote, "We have 6 effing minutes. We have 30 seconds of a song, and if we take a minute, that's it. We've got 5 left." And then she continued saying, "It's not going to be a dance effing review. We have to sing our message. This is the worst idea in the world to have 2 people do the Super Bowl. It was the worst idea in the world." So that is the quote. And a lot of people are feeling some type of way about it. So I'm curious for you. Let me know what you're thinking when you're hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, the fact that, like, it's her thing, right? She approved it, so it's not like she's hiding from this, like, realness. So, like, okay, I give her honestly props for as, like, because you got to think, we're in an era of, like, we want to see the gods fart, you know, like, you know, it's like, that's because back in the day, J-Lo's from that era where they were perfect, like, they had no personal opinion. They had no thoughts on politics. They had to look sparkly clean, and that's just what they were from that era, because she's been famous forever.
Right.
So I kind of like the fact that for her being from this era, she's allowing us to see her fart a little bit, show her real, see that other side.
In the documentary you're talking about,
in the documentary is what I'm saying, because she had to sign off on this.
Sure. Yep.
So I'm like, okay, a controversy creates cash. People are gonna want to see it and talk about it, and she's a business woman.
Yeah.
So I think she's playing the strings a little bit.
Okay.
And it's so, like, honestly, you know, you don't want to look back, because, like, these are 2 icons on stage, you know.
100%.
But, like, yeah, again, she's been like famous forever. I could definitely see her being like, yo, what they have such a high standard. And
Sure.
like plus ego and all that. I mean, being that famous for so long. So I give her props for letting us see that side. Am I surprised? No. But I'm surprised she let us see it. So kudos to her. I want to see some of the drama. That's what it's all about, right?
Right. I mean, I think that's a great point, right? Because obviously she is not like somebody's not filming a doc and she has no control over it, right? So obviously she can say, cut that. I don't want that included. And to your point, she is a businesswoman. We are talking about this doc maybe more than we would have had we have not had this quote sort of out of context, right? But also it is a bit disappointing to a degree though, because I also kind of feel like it was such a huge moment for our community to be up there on that stage, right? And to see all these amazing artists come together and the political conversations that they sparked with some of the messaging that they had, right? And the fact that it was an all Latino performers on that stage. And it's disappointing to hear that somebody's ego would sort of allow them to look past that fact, right? And the reality is, this is nothing new for the Super Bowl. Most of the time it's probably a few different performers. I mean, even think about this last one. You literally had Dr. Dre and friends, right? But it was like Eminem barely played any songs, right? Kendrick was short. Like 50 Cent literally did half a song, right? These are gigantic artists, arguably many of them on the same level as J-Lo, right? As far as music goes. And they all came together. And who knows behind the scenes, right? But to me, that's a bit disappointing to allow your ego to get in the way of understanding the cultural importance of a moment like this. That's kind of where I see, where it gives me a bad taste.
Man, the fact that you said that immediately, just the fact that your ego could get in the way of the cultural importance. And I think that it's sad because I guess I'm not surprised because it's the entertainment business, the industry. Like, I mean, obviously it was so impactful and I was so appreciative when she like spread out like a peacock with the Puerto Rican flag and just like close. That's like, yes. But like, the behind the scenes of the drama and all that. Cause I'm like, look at Will Smith. Such a beautiful cultural importance of a Black man receiving his Oscar over such a phenomenal Black American story.
Yes.
And he used his ego to get, I mean, you can go back and forth with that all day.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is to ruin a moment of something it's so much bigger than you.
Yeah,
so it's like, it's unfortunate the ego in the industry could get in the way of the big picture.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's just so funny because like you look at, I'll tie it into movies and like every press tour in a movie is like, we're really like a family. Oh, me and insert this actor, we were just so close. They ain't close. Know, there's all this drama.
Right.
So it's unfortunately we got it to happen. Even with all the inner workings in the back, we still got to receive that pride. But you're right, it is unfortunate. You would hope that we were all on board, even behind the scenes. So
right. That's
wild.
Right, but I mean, and to your point, it's not a shocker though. That is the entertainment industry. Right. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody strives to be that level of famous without some sort of an ego and trying to compensate for something. Right. That's the unfortunateness of many people's plague, I guess, in the entertainment industry. Right.
It doesn't make it right, but unfortunately,
absolutely, it's the unfortunate truth. But I mean, so let's now kind of switch gears. We're gonna do a bit of a hard turn, and we're gonna kind of talk about something that is a little bit scary when you talk about human rights, and this actually was happening at the border in Canada, but it has impacts for our Mexican brothers and sisters and anybody that's coming through that looking for a better life essentially. And you had this Supreme Court ruling this last week that basically ruled that it's illegal to sue Border Patrol agents for excessive force. And this was coming off of a case that, like I said, happened at the Canadian border. And it's a plaintiff who was alleging that Border Patrol agents used excessive force to detain him. And they're basically saying with this latest ruling, you'll be able to file a formal complaint against an officer. But those complaints are subject to internal review by other law enforcement agencies. And most importantly, the decision to exonerate the accused officer cannot be reviewed or appealed by another agency, right? And so basically you're saying the cops are going to police the cops, which we all know never seems to work out properly in this country. And again, this happened at the Canadian border, but now it sets the precedent where we've seen the atrocities that happen at the Mexican border and how these people are not being treated like human beings. And this almost now takes them away from having any real responsibility. You know, it's obviously frustrating. I mean, I'd love to hear your kind of take after hearing that.
It's just so unfortunate that we live in a society where we can have so many wins going forward, but yet still have these things that pass to make us further back, almost to create this unfortunate mirage that there has been no progress at all.
Yes,
and
well said.
it's so you can't tell me it has nothing to do with like very specific interests or one side of control. At the end of the day, it's control. Clearly, it doesn't matter what border it is, it's control. Right. But and that's the unfortunate thing. Like, in what world does it make sense to have your own party police what could happen? Like, so pretty much someone could punch my wife in the face. Yeah. I have to send out a complaint. Right. And then his buddy that he just had drinks with last week gets the review to be like, don't do that. Or it just gets lost in the paper trail. It's ridiculous because it just creates fear. Yeah. And you know, we tout and share like, oh, America, land of the free, with these very specific things. Like, we could beat you up at the border, and there's these very specific rules and everything else. But other than that, welcome. You know, it's like it's like you go to Disney and then they like, well, we got to jump you first, and then you got to give us $10,000 and wait 5 years, but eventually you get to come to Disney. I don't even want to go anymore. It's very sad and unfortunate. I had no idea that even happened. So that's I can't believe that. That is wild.
And it's scary because it's like, why wouldn't you want your officers to be held accountable if they take it too far, right? Like why would you not want your employee to have some sort of system in place that if they do something wrong, that they are then reprimanded, right? Like, why, if you're so confident that these people are not doing wrong things, then why the fear of allowing an outside source, you know, be the one who judges whether they did something wrong or not, you know? So it just continues to show the power dynamic, right? And like you said, it's all about control. It's not about actually helping people. It's not about, you know, doing the right thing or even, you know, making sure that laws are in place, right? It's really just about keeping that control and keeping that power dynamic in favor of those who wear the badge. And you know, let's be honest, the majority of it's white America, right? That's where it all boils down to at the end of the day in this country.
Exactly. And that control and that fear. They're like, do not come here. Do not go through the border. We want you to be afraid. Like, my brother went to college in Niagara Falls, like Buffalo, New York. Sure. And literally going to the Canada side, I swear they probably I think they gave me like free ice cream or something and a pat on the back. Not actually, but that's what it felt like going on to that side. And then back to the US side, it was literally barbed wire. Yeah. The most intimidating thing you could think of. And it's like, I almost think they don't. Clearly, the Canadian side doesn't look like this. They have this side for a reason, and they want to keep people out and provide that fear to keep them out. And I worked on the Better Like team with BuzzFeed, where we created Latino digital content, and we did a video where we went to the border and to Tijuana to volunteer with the asylum seekers. Sure. And the system's already so broken, and these people have been lost, living in some kids on their own, living in these homes and these churches for years. Right. And to say that now there's this additional, I guess, checks and balances that is removed already, that is something that is so scary, is just deeply unfortunate of a society. And I think that's why we can't stop. Even a tweet goes a long way. Sure. And we can't stop tweeting. We can't stop talking. We can't stop sharing. We can't stop doing everything that we can do. Right. And I'm glad you brought this story up so we could be at least a little bit of a ripple effect to kind of be like, what the hell's going on when you do something about it? Right. I mean, the conversations, like you said, they're important. I know a lot of people just kind of think, oh, we're just sharing stuff on social media, or they're just kind of like, I'm sick of seeing all this depressing stuff. But the reality is, that's what they want you to do, right? They want you to forget about it and they can move on from it. You know what I mean? It's the same thing why, you know, when we're having these terrible shootings, they begin introducing these ludicrous bills about drag queens and kids and things like that, right? Like, it's all meant to make us forget about what the actual issue is that they're trying to avoid. And that's why we have to keep talking about it, as heavy as the topics are. We have to keep speaking about it and not allow their tactics of trying to kind of sway us to look at the next shiny object. You know what I mean? That's basically what they're doing. Exactly, 100%, 100%. It's always like, okay, look over here. Usually you have to ask yourself, okay, why do they want me to look here so bad? Maybe I should look over here. What's going on over there? You know, it's it is wild, because I literally, you told me I didn't even know this, you know, for the first time. And so and my brown ass going, I like to travel, so who knows? I would have been stuck in Canada somewhere. But yeah, that's wild, man. That is truly unfortunate. Jesus.
No, absolutely. I mean, and so we've obviously covered a couple, negative stories. Let's lighten things up a little bit and talk about something positive that is happening in our community. Now, a lot of people are going crazy over this because you have this upcoming Netflix series from Tim Burton where Jacqueline Ortega is actually going to play Wednesday Addams. And if anybody not familiar, she's of Mexican and Puerto Rican descent. And obviously, for a number of reasons, this is huge. The representation is always incredible to see, especially in a place like Hollywood, which you're well aware of. It doesn't, have much of an awareness for these types of things. But to see her also in something that's attached to a legendary name like Tim Burton then elevates it that much higher, right? And then on top of it, the Addams Family, which is this gigantic franchise historical thing that our parents know about, right? That's been going on forever. It's just a huge moment for a young actress like this who represents the Latin diaspora. So I mean, obviously this is your world, this is your wheelhouse. You see something like this announced, how does it make you feel?
Oh man, well I'm actually half Mexican, so so that's really dope to see a Mexican. I remember seeing the ads come out, like the little like teasers, and stuff, and I'm like, we always claim this as a Latino story, right? Because the Gomez's, they're like, they're like Latino family. So, and as someone who grew up with like punk rock, goth, all that Latino kid, it's just like, I wanted to straighten my hair and get the spikes and all that, but I couldn't because this afro wouldn't let it. It's so dope. Like I was talking to some other friends of mine who also were in that like wave. Yeah. And they always looked up to her, and to actually be played by this dope Latina that's going to have her series with Tim Burton, it moves the needle a bit. It validates us and shows that we could be here. And then they recognizing us, because they could have easily casted this with a white actor. You know what I mean? So like the goth kid in me super happy. The Mexican Latin kid in me super happy. Yeah. And I always tell people, like, we are nowhere near where we need to be as a community in Hollywood. Sure. But we are we're in the best position ever right now. And now is the time to keep using that momentum. So I tell everybody, watch the hell out of this thing. Whatever our people are out there making or in it, like we need to show the corporate overlords that this is something we want to see. So another call to action for everyone. Has a lot of homework on this episode. But it's like another call to action. Watch it.
But it's true, though, because that'll be the excuse, right? Because this happens a lot in the black community as well, where they say, well, here's the thing. If it's led by a black actor or actress, or a Latin actor or actress, or it's a black-centered story or a Latin-centered story, then it only appeals to just that audience, right? But for some reason, white stories were like, hey, that's for everybody, right? That's what Hollywood sees it as. But then what they'll do is, if this isn't a success, they'll say, you see, this is what happens when we make it, too culturally centric, or we cast somebody who is of color. It now begins to lessen the amount of people who are potentially going to see it, right? That's the ongoing excuse that tends to happen in Hollywood. So to your point, it's incredibly important to, whenever we see anybody get an opportunity who is a person of color, be it behind the camera or in front of it, we need to support, because the Hollywood essentially is looking for them to be proven right, that our stories can't be ingested by the general public, or related to, I should say.
Exactly. And this is in a really exciting space for because right now we're in the era of sequels and prequels and this and already made content IP. So if we could diversify the IP from what it traditionally was, that just hit me right now. Is what's they're like, oh, who's going to be the new James Bond? They're looking at Idris Elba, like they're looking at Doctor Who as a black man. So I'm like, we could. That's kind of like almost like a side pothole in the industry, like a side like back corner, because the industry feels safer. You're making risks on money with creating things. So that's why people make IP that's already exists. But if we could diversify that IP, we're still kind of getting to where we need to be. And if it's successful, that's even better. So This is actually really exciting. I'm everyone just watch, share.
Right. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Do your homework that we're giving you and support
right?
the show.
Exactly.
I mean, let's obviously now talk all about your doing. I mean, you have a movie called Bodies Will Tumble and Roll. I know that you personally focus on having projects that center around, BIPOC characters and actors and actresses. And if you're not familiar, that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, right? So you focus on telling those stories, or at least having that representation, right, with your project. So I mean, I guess first and foremost, let's start with what exactly is the film about that we're having here.
Yeah, exactly. So I always tell people, like, I want to create worlds, ideas that are going to bring in the masses, that are going to excite people, but give them stories once they're in that theater that show who we are and us, and better understand us, and know that we're more normal, or to represent maybe an issue or something, to push the narrative and our perspective forward as a community, humanity. But so with Bodies Will Tumble and Roll, it's a comedy horror. And very much inspired by, like, I'm the oldest of 6 little sisters. I'm half Mexican, half Puerto Rican. So I got Afro-Latina little sisters. I got light-skinned Mexican little sisters. I grew up Mexican, Puerto Rican. I saw the clashing with our community head to head. Like, oh, you're better. No, I'm better. No, forget this, forget that. And it keeps us so separated as a community, when we should come together and share about Border Patrol stuff, and come together and have a universal message about a film or movie, no matter if I'm Cuban or not and the character's Cuban. So I saw that and I was like, okay, I want to deliver this message, but I like telling it in fun worlds of genre that we've never seen before. So we always see the Black and brown people in horror movies always die first, especially the cheerleaders, always so dainty. So I was like, let me flip it on the head. I'm going to have a Black and brown dysfunctional cheer squad from the inner cities come to a cabin in the woods to sort out their issues. And they're going to have to learn how to become a team and end up being the people that have the power and terrorize these so-called serial killers in the woods when they think their coach is stolen. So that's what the story all comes together, is all these girls have different perspectives and insecurities that represent the Latino community. So if it's colorism, or if, like, I'm the best because I'm Mexican, or I don't feel Latina enough because I'm 3rd generation, don't speak Spanish, all these girls deal with something and come together and learn to accept each other and come together as a community in order to pretty much beat up serial killers in the woods. So it's a really fun comedy horror, all centered around this Afro-Latina character played by Luz Zuna and Chelsea Rendon, and they're button heads with their team. And it's just a really good time, action, fun, but with a lot of heart and a message that's all about us. So that's what it's all about. So we're really excited for it. It's really fun.
I love that, man, because you're hitting on so many different things that we don't see the representation for, right? Like, we've seen the, New York City Latino, the New York City Puerto Rican. We've seen that stereotypical story told. We've seen the story of Mexicans told, right? But the beauty of our culture is that we are incredibly diverse, right? We share so many similarities in different countries, but also so many different differences and different things that we deal with, and identity-wise. And you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about 3rd generation, and then that's a whole nother, identity complex that comes along with things like that. So I think that's such a beautiful thing to have all of that sort of representation, so many different ideas happening in one place to showcase the diversity of our community, because that's often lost when you talk about our stories being told, right? And I guess for me, my question would be then, you're obviously creating a very sort of complex world to a degree for anybody who is not familiar with the diversity of our community. I mean, how hard is it for you to bring these sort of stories to life, right? When you're having this priority, this focus of like, this kind of is the baseline that I need to cover before, anybody can make this film. Like, we need to make sure we're telling the stories of people of color and things like that. I mean, talk about a bit of the struggles of bringing projects like this one to life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, I have to thank, Netflix and LALIF, the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival. They put together an amazing fellowship of half Afro-Latinos, half Indigenous filmmakers. And they provided us resources, finances to get our stories told. And they were very hands-off. They're like, make your story. So thanks to them to really lift this off the ground. And we premiered at LALIF at the Chinese Theater a couple weeks ago. So we got like an amazing reaction from the crowd. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, why I love movies is that it reminds us that we're all human. In a world that is so designed on my team versus your team, separation, like not understanding each other. You could go into a movie theater and laugh at the same things and cry at the same things and understand the same things. And when you look at it, it's certain themes of family, of love. It's all universal stuff. And those are the little reminders. Like it could be a white guy Trumper and Mr. Liberal McGee. They could still watch Endgame and still get all emotional when Tony Stark dies. You know, that's just like we are more human than you think through these inadvertent ways to show ourselves that. And so I try to go through it that way of, okay, what's a message I want to tell with this story? But also the plot also helps us pretty much get into the world. Like, cheerleaders, horror, classic American horror themes. Dude, comedy. All right, I'm in. This is fun. I don't feel like I'm learning something. But then then you start reminding yourself, okay, what is the human experience? Yes, I want to show colorism and someone feeling it. But at the end of the day, Yvette is the character that is the squeaky little good girl who is third generation. She's very like whitewashed. She doesn't speak Spanish. The Latino community can relate to that. But overall, really it is someone who is growing to be someone that she's meant to be. She has a lot of insecurities. She's very shy. We've all been through that one way or the other. It's that introverted way of like, what is this character representing? But what is the universal human experience that they're going through? And making sure you keep those two together to keep both audiences on track to feel represented, but also the others to understand that person through this experience. So it is a juggling act, but luckily I have, 30 plus years of experience with it. So it's I'm just being this identity. But that's the challenge I love to take on. Like I'm the oldest of 10 siblings, 6 of them being little sisters. The dynamic of chaos in a house and the growing and all that. I love films and been doing it for over a decade. So it's a beautiful blend of all those things.
Yeah, no, and I think that's so well said. And you're talking about kind of this idea of like the medicine with the candy, right? Where you give people something sweet, something that is familiar, and then you kind of subconsciously also educate them and give them a story that they weren't necessarily expecting, right? But in an entertaining way. And I think that's the way to break through, right? There's no other way, because we're living in such a polarizing time period right now where off the bat, people feel like they have, your entire life story made up for you based upon who you voted for in the last election, right? And to be fair, it happens on both sides, right? I see a Trump sign on my neighbor's front lawn, I automatically assume me and that person are not going to get along, right? But the reality is that we are human beings, and we are so deep, right? We all have so much depth, and there is some sort of common ground, no matter who it is, right? Like if we're open enough to it, and we are able to be empathetic or enough to the human condition, we all can find something, right? And I was realizing this week. I'm like refurnishing a part of my studio, and I went to pick up some furniture that I found in like Facebook Marketplace, right? And I went into this area that's like super, Trump town, and like, super white dude that very much was like a Trumper, but I had a Yankee hat on, and we like bonded over baseball, right? And it was like, so I went into it like, knowing the area, was like, all right, I'm probably just have to get the hell in and out of here, and on my guard, and we bonded over baseball and literally had like a cool, few minute conversation that I genuinely enjoyed, right? And it's those little moments that allow you to recognize the humanity in all of us, and not to say that you should give everybody a free pass for all of their actions, right? But at the same time, the only way I think for us as a culture, as a country, to heal, to get to a place of understanding, is recognizing that, there is still a human being in every single person. There is some sort of commonality, and if we're able to get past sort of the tough exterior, that we have hope for the human race, I guess, as a whole.
Exactly. Like, I mean, that's so beautifully said, my man. I'm so glad you had that moment. I was like, you have those unexpected things of like, same. I was like in West Virginia doing a shoot or something. I was like the only man of color on the crew. And there's this guy that had a country boy tattoo and like Confederate flag tattoo. I was like, oh God. And he was like a gas station attendant, and he was like, I was wearing like a UFC shirt. He was like, I freaking love UFC, man. I was like, yeah, dude, it's great. I gotta go. Yeah, but it was, he seemed like a nice guy. But it is interesting that we're all coming from a place of like, we all love these core values of our family. We want to do the best for everybody. And we live in this crazy world. I'm not saying, go find your Trump neighbor and give him a hug and a kiss on the cheek,
right,
but there's a sense of understanding behind all of us. And I just think in this world of social media, like I love social media. I love the digital space. I think provides so much, but it can create a separation where if you get everyone in one theater and just show them a little something, I mean, that just gets me going. And it's like, I'm never going to be a politician. I've done enough crazy YouTube videos that no one will ever vote for me. But what I can do is I could make content, movies or something that could at least move the needle just a little bit. Even you and your talk show space, it's so important and needed. Yeah. And from a nurse, I'm not saying we're nowhere near as important as a nurse, but everyone's doing their part on the worlds of passion. So it's like, no matter what you do, just even if it's just the littlest bit, just try to make the world a little bit of a better place.
Right. And I think that's perfectly said, a perfect way to kind of conclude it is we're all doing our part, and this idea that we have to be this politician or have some sort of massive platform to make a difference, is wrong. At the end of the day, who knows, I might have changed that guy's perspective, right? By me being, friendly to him, and he might start second guessing some of the things that he's been taught, growing up or whatever it is, and that might sort of start poking holes in some of the narrative that he's been shown throughout the course of his life, right? I don't know, but it could be, right? It could be a little start to that. And I think that's what we all kind of have to keep in mind. There are little parts that we all can do to help kind of, create this more inclusive and man, I don't know, without sounding cheesy, this more beautiful world that I'm sure we're all kind of striving for, for future generations,
I love the cheese. Bring the cheese, man. When you get kissed, all the queso dip, dude. Life is too hard, man. Have you seen Ted Lasso?
No, I have. It's on my list, but I haven't sat down and watched it. I know,
you gotta watch it. It's just a show that works out, and you're just so happy because everything's so sad right now. It's like, okay, I just want something to I remember the '90s with the sitcoms, you spilled the milk, but at the end of the episode, we all became closer as a family. I'm like, we need that sometimes, man. It's like,
true.
It's hard out here, so. Yeah.
No, absolutely, man. Well, listen, bro, it's been a pleasure getting to talk with you, and I appreciate you, sharing your story and having this conversation. I mean, so the film, I know you said you guys just did the premiere of it. So where can people watch it? When can they expect to start, seeing the rollout for it?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me in your space. Yeah, we're really excited. So we have our IG page. It's BWTR Film. It's on Instagram. You can see all the updates because we're on our festival circuit right now.
Sure.
We'll be playing in Redwood, California, July 8th. And we're rolling out for other festivals for the 2022-2023 season. So we'll provide all updates on our IG page. Yeah. Also, the goal is to get this out as far as many people can see. How it works, it takes 12 months for us to get it online virtually. But you can get it early by, again, go on that IG page. You can get more info to support the film because we're trying to make it a feature. So we're collecting funds right now. So you could be a part of the cheer squad. And through that, you get a copy early. You don't have to wait for a festival or anything like that. But yeah, man, that's really where we're at. And my social is, it's Eli Vazquez across social. So holler at me, say hi, virtual high five and all that. Yeah.
I appreciate it, bro. Thank you so much, man. Hopefully we'll definitely get to connect. If it's playing in the New York area, man, I definitely would love to come out and support.
Oh, no, we're going to New York. That's going to happen. No, I got too many New Yorican cousins to not make that happen. So we'll be there. I'll let you know.
Definitely, brother. I appreciate it, man. Well, listen, man, great getting to connect, and best of luck with all the future endeavors, man.
Sweet, man. Thank you so much for having me in your space. I really appreciate it, bro.
Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Eli Vazquez, for hopping on the show. I'm beyond excited to check out that film. I mean, Bodies Will Tumble and Roll. The name alone gets me excited as a horror buff, but also knowing that it is my people. It is people representing the Latin diaspora. I love this kind of, man, combining of two of my passions in this world. So big shout out to him and all the work that he's doing. Make sure you go follow him and the film on social media. And with that said, man, let's end on some positivity in the form of a positive quote. Now, this week's quote, man, in the spirit of some of the conversations that Eli and I were having, this is one about the commonality between all of us as human beings in this world, right? Now, this quote comes to us from Sarah Maitland, and she says, "It is not simply that we share with each other a common humanity, but that individually we have no humanity without each other." And I just thought that was so beautifully said, and it was profound, especially again in the context of the conversation that we were having on today's show. And I know I go hard at the other side. I am not backing down when it comes to my opinion. But at the end of the day, whatever side of the aisle you fall on, we all need each other if we want, humanity to continue to exist and survive, not only in this country, but in this world, right? And that starts with understanding the commonalities between all of us. Maybe we don't agree on everything. Maybe we have some ideas that could be harmful to some. And oftentimes, like I've talked about on the show, we're often products of our own environment, right? And we're unaware of the poison that's been seeping into our minds because of our environment. And now that doesn't mean you allow people who do terrible things to get a free pass, but it also means that we should be open to having a conversation with one another and understanding that we may have more in common than we think on the surface, right? And I think that's an amazing start to building a far better world, and one that we all don't have to live in fear of simply just existing in. Man, now with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into this week's episode. We'll be back next week with a brand new one. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.